Good evening. Good evening. Happy, I guess today is now the 25th of February. So happy Black History Month and our last 3 days. I hope you guys have had a very, very positively eventful Black History Month. Today, I am joined by our esteemed guest, Shanae Wilson, a serial entrepreneur, and she will be talking about some of the things that she sees as parallels between Black business in the past and the present and how it directly affects her. So let's go ahead and get started.
All right. Well, okay. So, hey everyone. I am Shanae Wilson, and I am, like Nelson said, a serial entrepreneur. First of all, I just want to thank Nelson for inviting me on here. I think this is totally cool, and I'm just grateful for my friendship with Emerging 100 North Metro Atlanta. I say that.
That is
Okay,
correct.
cool
That is
beans.
correct.
So, so I really everything honestly happens through guys relationships, and when I tell you, you get back what you put out, and I'm really grateful and I'm thankful for you guys. So thank you for having me on here. Thank you.
The pleasure is all ours. So, as we kind of segue into our presentation for today, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Shanae. As I was saying earlier, we're talking about Black business, the past versus the present. So, to kind of give you a little bit more information about Shanae Dominique Turner Wilson, she is a serial entrepreneur, one of the co founders of Inflatable Venues, also a realtor. From my understanding, also a published author as of 2018. I think there are very few things that Shanae doesn't do. Did you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you for that. So, yes, as Nelson just said, I am an Atlanta real estate agent. I am a member of the Atlanta Realtor Association. So it holds us to a higher level. So I'm proud to say that. Also, I am a published author, so you can find my book on Amazon and Audible, and it's called The Five Keys to Success in the Beauty Industry. And like Nelson said, I wrote it back in 2018. And to be honest with you, it's for anyone in the corporate world, for anyone in industry like sales, or just anyone looking to do more in their career field. That's really who it's for, because the principles in there, it literally hones in on five keys, and I won't give them all to you, but confidence and consistency are two of those keys, and it really just kind of expounds upon that. And they're really a lot of my what has catapulted me to where I am today in the different industries that I've been able to navigate through and flow through. Also that I missed one. Oh, then my business, which initially I started it here just recently in 2024, and started it with one inflatable tent. And now we have expanded into, we have three inflatable tents now. So I'm really excited about that. And we really just do a lot of corporate events. We do some personal events. But the market, it was bare when it came to inflatable tent rentals. They always had where you could purchase one, but never where you could just rent one. And sometimes people just don't want that sitting in their garage. So, yeah, that is what I do. And I love everything that I do. Everything that I do, it actually allows me to be my authentic self. So, that's why I love it.
I love that you said that. We'll get to being your authentic self in business and leadership a little bit later. So let's get to kind of the purpose as to why we're here today. So I want to walk you guys through the various eras of Black business. Everyone knows Black Wall Street. Most people do, I would say, but there are certain things that were precursors to that era that were made it possible. I want to also show you the ties between the innovative strategies that those people, those forefathers, trailblazers, developed into present day practices. And then lastly, show how current entrepreneurs, such as Shanae, identify business opportunities. So let's just break down the timeline a little bit. Prior to the year 1900, we have some early foundations in terms of some of your first pioneers, maybe your first millionaires, first lumber salesmen, lumber merchants, etc. Then between 1900 and that 50-year span, we have the rise of Black Wall Street, which most people prominently know. After that, following 1950, we're going straight into the civil rights era, which has a series of constraints that were placed upon people and business men and women that look like us. So there was some creativity necessary. And thus, from 1970 onward, we're approaching the modern era. So if we jump straight into early foundations, some of these people you may know, some of them you may not. We have Madam C.J. Walker, Stephen Smith, Mary Ellen Pleasant, and Free Frank McWhorter. Each of these people are listed or pictured left to right on this image. And so some of the black owned first, as you'll see, are Capital Savings Bank, True Reformers Bank, and North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance. So for those of you all who know Madam C.J. Walker, first self-made millionaire, but in terms of becoming the millionaire through an innovative product as well as sales training, Stephen Smith, first lumber merchant, Mary Ellen Pleasant, Free Frank McWhorter actually bought his freedom and went into business by gaining real estate. So some of these people basically are leveraging the resources they have, the economic empowerment that they have in order to build the foundations, build their equity, build their business, and move to the next level. So if we go more into some of the keys for success. So I already talked about some of the product development and providing sales training that Madam CJ Walker did. So we also had heavy investments in real estate. And that's what Stephen Smith definitely leveraged in his opportunity that was given to him. But he also understood municipal laws for property restoration. So one of his estates, I would say, or one of his buildings, they were used primarily for organization, social organization. And given that it was destroyed in a race related riot, he was able to leverage that insurance policy to make back more money than the business was, or I'm sorry, the building was originally purchased for. And lastly, the diversification of different business assets, being able to create businesses in restaurants, laundries, boarding houses, etc., while all owning those different businesses. So my first question to you, Shay, is which business practices or keys for success stick out to you as things you currently implement in one of your various businesses, and why?
Okay, so this is actually really, really neat that we're talking about this, and it's something that I've been on now for some time. I I've always had a mind for just being an entrepreneur endeavors. I have literally, I think I've held a actual corporate or 9 to 5 job. um I don't know, maybe only a couple of times throughout my career, and it was always very short lived. So I've been an entrepreneur my entire life, and that has been my bread and butter my entire life since I graduated high school. um so I would say definitely, you know and even before I graduated high school, I was an entrepreneur. But really, the honest part of this would really be relationships and building relationships with people. That right there is what's really going to help you create a sustainable business. And so I know with a lot of these stories that we just talked about on here, Madam CJ Walker and some of the others, I'm just really familiar with Madam CJ Walker's story because she was in the beauty industry as well. And that is my foundation. Um, so just with hearing, their stories and different things like that, like it does not surprise me that I eventually matriculated into real estate at all. Um, and many of you, because you don't know me and you may not follow me on social media, but I'm a big history buff. And so just recently for the last week of Black History Month, I started to go ahead and do a series of Black history figures who are in the real estate, but who had their beginnings in the beauty industry. And so, two of the figures that I've highlighted so far were Alonzo Herndon, who was, here a Georgia native, and then also um, uh, Philip Payton Jr., who got his start over in the East Coast and kind of was the father of, the Harlem Renaissance and, Harlem and all that, right? So they both got their starts in the beauty industry. They were both barbers in their own rights, right? So I think for us, I say black folk, um, for us black folk, I truly believe for some of us, and of course this is not everybody, but a lot of us, I think there is with our hands getting, man, when you work with your hands, man, you can just control so much of, you eat what you kill pretty much, you know what I'm saying? And that's, kind of the background that I come from, being a tradeswoman, right? And so with that being said, they were able, like you said, to get their equity up to where Herndon was one of the richest black men of his era, in Atlanta, Georgia, owning over, I believe, 100 properties, So, owning barbershops, very large barbershops in that, time. And so, just knowing that history, it's like, man, I see it so much, especially today, where in the beauty industry, unfortunately, we get a bad rep. And I don't know if you guys follow policy or anything like that, but actually, on the floor now, they're trying to actually deregulate the beauty industry, which is very sad. So the bill did pass, and now, it's up to, I can't remember who's the next step. Correct me, please. But it's up for them, up to our congressmen and women to pretty much say whether, that's going to go through or not. So it's a really sad thing, because once they deregulate that, now anybody who just wants to hop up and be whoever they want to be no longer has to be licensed to do your hair or cut your hair. And that's very dangerous. So, just let me digress. I just kind of went off on a tangent on my high horse really quick. But, definitely getting into, like, it's something entrepreneurial. Like today, you can't just have just one stream of income. You really can't live off one stream of income today. So really just being able to kind of, get in there, do something that you're passionate about, you love, which for me it was the beauty industry. And for a lot of these figures back in the day, that was something that their moms and their dads grew up doing, that, that trade, whether they were in the beauty industry as barbers or hairstylists, or if they were brick masons, or whatnot, whatever it was. That's kind of how they got their equity, how they were able to raise funds to be able to go ahead and make larger purchases. And so that is something that I think I'm led by. um and yeah, so that would be the long answer.
You named multiple like gems in your answer, and some are you're going to see the parallels in the next few slides. So I thank you for kind of queuing that up for me, especially talking about the various trades, skilled trades that really built the foundation of Black wealth, and basically the foundation of us having our own. So speaking of having our own, let's go ahead and talk about Black Wall Street, the one that you guys know in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, of course, there are other iterations of Black Wall Street or approximations similar to this, but the one that I believe most people know is in Greenwood District, Tulsa, Oklahoma, which served as a retail entertainment location with various professional services. It was a home to over 108 Black businesses. So just like you were just saying, in Atlanta, Herndon had multiple businesses. Imagine this, but prior to 1950, right? And it's not just barbershops. We're talking Stratford Hotel, Dreamland Theater, entertainment spots, etc., even hairdressers, like you said. So we are able to, one, build the building thanks to being skilled tradesmen, brick masons. We're able to provide the service thanks to being licensed cosmetologists or barbers. We're able to also provide the entertainment, being said entertainers, curating the content. And it's kind of a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Now, Unfortunately, we all know that Black Wall Street was destroyed during the Tulsa Race Massacre. It was rebuilt, but it did not reach the pinnacle it once had in the past. And it declined further due to systemic racism and economic constraints, right? And you were talking about just now, one of those economic constraints is probably more political slash economic because the bill has gone to Congress and they're voting on it. But being able to deregulate that industry, as you said, the dangers that could now approach the beauty industry when you have someone who is unlicensed and is not familiar with maybe the different procedures, the different substances that are used for maybe hair dyeing or, using texturizer or things of that nature, because that is a chemical process, how that could invite one, bad stigma, two, bad business, and three, ultimately hurt the industry. So,
Definitely.
some keys for success that we saw here in this era was being able to reinvest into your community. So, you talked earlier about relationships, 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 and how being able to build said relationships are really beneficial to one, getting yourself out there, and two, capturing that business need. Could you tell me about the value relationships has given your individual businesses, or maybe one business in particular?
Okay. Gosh, I could give you tons of, honestly, I could give you tons of examples, but let's go on the beauty business, right? And then I'll even do the beauty business and as it matriculated into real estate. But in the beauty business, so what people don't understand, and I think a lot of people fail to realize, is that besides your doctor, besides your therapist, besides any other prominent or industry that's known to be um, amazing up there, your dentist, your doctor, all that kind of stuff. Us as hairstylists, we touch your body the most. We're very intrusive, very invasive. We are the people who actually tell you when something is wrong outwardly and you should go get it checked out. That's who we are. And so with that being said, the relationships that I have built over time, because, you know, I was able to, be honest with my clients, and my clients love honesty. And then they're able to, you know what I'm saying, because they trust me with their hair and touching them and different things like that. Now they're trusting me with information, or they're trusting me with, their family, or, they're referring me out to other people. So my business grew off of those relationships to where I was referral based for a number of years. I didn't really advertise. I didn't do discounts. And as a matter of fact, my prices grew. Um, and, with that growth of my prices, I still maintained my clients and my client base. I was consistent. I was consistent. I showed up. It was rare that I was late. So you couldn't put me with those other kitchen tissues, Susie, as I would say. It was rare that I was late. For one thing, for me was growing up in it as I was in school. I was able to be mentored by a local hairstylist back from where I'm from in Indiana. And so I saw how she ran business. Man, when I tell you, she did hair. Okay, she did amazing hair. The only thing that, was questionable, and from mentors, we learned the good and the bad. She took lots of breaks. If you were there at 10 in the morning, you weren't getting out till 10 at night, right? So there was a lot of things that, although she was amazing at what she did, and she was one of the best in Indiana where I was from, there literally, were things that I was like that have stuck with me to today. So it would be to where literally I'm in this line. If you're not out my chair in two, depending on what you're getting done, 1, 2, 3 hours max, I haven't made any money. Like, that's a problem for me. Like, I'm still looking at you. Like, I love you, but you need to be gone because that means I didn't make any money, you know? And so for me, it. I was able to run it as such as a business, and then that attracted more customers because most of my customers were corporate women, and I definitely, I marketed to that type of clientele because at the end of the day, I wanted clients that needed to get their hair done because they had to be seen. They were going to be in front of people and they couldn't look crazy. So that was my target audience right there. And so, with that being said, I always had, clientele, even during the pandemic, because a lot of my clients were essential. So they still had to go in. I had scientists, I had, doctors, they had to be available. And yes, they still had to get their hair done. You know what I'm saying? Especially as Black women. We just were not going to be out representing ourselves like that because, as we all know, for a Black woman, if you do not come in looking your best or like something, people automatically assume that you're off your game and that something's wrong. We literally have to be a step above, and that's just what it is. um so again, building those relationships with them, like literally I had to, scale back my clientele because before last year, I'm sorry, for the most of last year, I actually began teaching cosmetology in a local beauty college. So I got licensed to teach cosmetology. And so I started teaching in a local beauty college, and it didn't allow me to keep my full roster. So, even though I do not service all the clients that I used to service, over the years, they still keep in contact. They still update me on things. Like a lot of them, I grew up with their kids, like, well, not grew up with their kids, excuse me, but I saw their kids grow up. Their kids grew up alongside my children. I have college students now. So at the end of the day, like, relationships are so real. And so we're, even as I matriculated into the real estate industry, I reached back, and a lot of those people, like, I literally have clients who uh I did their hair, or because I did their hair, they referred me to their boyfriend or whomever. So now I'm able to go ahead and sell a house to, through relationships like that. And because I kept really good relationships with my clients, they're like, of course, like, why wouldn't, I use you? And then at the end of the day, I know that making a home purchase is much larger than, what I call nickels and dimes, but baby, it was paying, okay? Doing hair. It still is the what am I the intimacy of, I literally was in their space. They trusted me with their full body. You know what I'm saying? So if I wouldn't trust her then, why would I not trust her now? And so that's what relationships have really done for me. Yeah.
Wow, that was really enlightening in terms of the value of the trust that you built with your client. And that's nothing that can be done in a short time. Good things really do take time, much like you were saying, your mentor who would take you from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm sure the hairstyle afterwards was fire. So it's understandable.
Absolutely.
It's understandable. Um, so there are a few things I also want to go over before we transition to the next section. So for those of you all who may not be familiar, vertical integration of markets is when you take at least 2 to 3 steps within your supply chain and take responsibility for it when operating your business. So if Shanae was to actually get maybe the inflatable venue service constructed and shipped, and that was all in-house, she would have a vertical integration on that market. I just wanted to explain that before we moved on to the last question for this slide. So you already started to touch on the value of mentorship. You get the good and the bad. In maybe 2 sentences, describe how really mentorship has changed not only your outlook on the beauty industry, but your outlook on being an entrepreneur in itself.
you know, Mentorship, this is what I tell my students. I'm going to try and make this as short as possible. So this is what I would tell my students when I was teaching and my old mentees and anybody seeking mentorship. I've had many mentors. I've paid thousands for mentors and I've had free mentors. Um, Mentorship, let's take me for instance. I am 20 years beauty industry veteran, right? If you are year one as a beauty industry expert, you now are 21 years a beauty industry veteran. Because if you were my mentee, then there is no way that you should not be 20 years advanced down the game. That's what mentorship does in any industry. It allows you to shortcut and not have to go through the pitfalls that mentor. So you have to make sure that number one, that mentor has the receipts. That's what you have to you have to make sure that number one, that's what's happening there, you know. And then number two, once you realize that, you have to know they're the expert subject matter. So lean on what they have to tell you. Don't still go about your own way, because that right there is a lot of times, and that has to do with being coachable as well, you know. And a lot of times people, they waste their money or they waste their time because they go try to pick someone's brain, somebody that they've already done the research on, and then they don't do anything with it. And we all know that applied knowledge is power. Knowledge isn't just power. You can be smart all day, but if you don't do anything with it, what are we doing?
Right.
I'll leave it there.
Wow, that's fantastic. So keep that in mind, everyone. If you're paying for mentorship and you're not doing anything with it, you're basically working backwards. Don't forget that. So, all right, that's a great segue into our next era. So we'll talk about the civil rights era. And so we have the rise of John H. Johnson's media empire. Remember Ebony and Jet magazines, Barry Gordy's Motown Records. We have our in-house services. We also have our in-house publishing rights and distribution. So one-stop shop. A.G. Gadsden's Funeral Home Insurance Motel Bank, as well as George Johnson Johnson Products Company. So here we're seeing the services being taken into individual niches of business or areas of business, but that person or entity serving all of the needs of the business at that one-stop shop. So instead of us subcontracting out those services, it is a one-time fee or maybe a service that's provided over time, and it's the same group of people each time. So going back to that, building that relationship. Hey, well, I already have a relationship with you. We were in the studio. I helped you write the chords. I helped you write the song. I helped you record the song. So now I'm going to help you distribute the song, get on the radio stations, and get in front of your audience and clientele and help book you for shows. The benefits of that are just compound and compound again versus you have to start all over with another person that you may not have as strong of a relationship with. So some key takeaways here. The creation of innovative business models. So we're approaching the civil rights era. So as you know, certain constraints are coming down the pipeline and constricting Black business in certain ways, right? I talked about vertical integration in the previous slide. So just like I said in the supply chain before, adopting 2 to 3 steps in your supply chain in that sector of business that you provide, your diversification of services. So what we found is many of these services, many of these businesses were also directly tied or closely tied with the civil rights movement. So there was a very big community investment, not just from the financial side, but also from the socio-emotional side as well. And sometimes, like you said with your mentor, why should you fall into the same pitfalls that I have already fallen into? So the creation of training opportunities. I should be telling you exactly. I should be telling you everything that I've done in the past so you don't have to, you are not doomed to repeat the same mistakes.
Absolutely.
And lastly, business models being community based and creating markets where markets didn't originally exist. So some of these key takeaways here, I feel like you may have discussed already, but I think one that I definitely want to hone in on is constraints. Constraints evolve as time goes on. And we even talked about this at the beginning of the presentation regarding the deregulation of the beauty industry. Could you tell us of any constraints that your businesses have had to adapt to in the past 5 years?
So I just feel like, you know, even globally, you can't talk about the past 5 years without mentioning COVID. You can't. And everybody, the world had to pivot, right? And so, again, as I mentioned, because of the clientele that I decided to serve early on, a lot of my clients were essential workers. So, a lot of them were just like, hey, yo, like, we still doing this, right? And, I'd be like, oh, I don't know, and, but a constraint was if you were in the city of Atlanta working, they will come by, they will ride by and shut you down if they see you working, right? So you couldn't be in the salon working in that capacity. And so, a lot of us, what we did, we opened up our homes. And at the end of the day, I was able to do that and I was able to pivot in that way because of those relationships I had built. Now, during this time, I did not take any new clients because if I did not know you, you were not coming in my house. But I had enough clientele um to where we had great relationships. My kids, I know your kids. And as a matter of fact, there were a lot of barber shops that couldn't work and, they weren't cutting hair anymore. So because I have barbering skills, I was cutting men's hair. I was cutting husband's hair. I was cutting son's hair because, as wives and, they was tired of looking at y'all, like, yo, you need to get something done with that. So, I would give lineups here and there, but, that was a constraint on that industry that I had to, either say, okay, Nay, you're either going to sit down and you're not going to have this income coming in, which that wasn't an option for me. So I had to make sure that I pivoted into something else. And one thing that I started doing actually, and I believe it was God, and I started actually laying the framework for right before COVID hit was my website so that I could go ahead and resell hair and wigs. And so that right there was another revenue stream for me during COVID because I had older women who they were not risking it. They weren't risking their lives. They wouldn't come out the house. Wasn't no mask gonna get it, okay? They wanted to stay alive, they stayed home. So, I had to do wigs. I had to send wigs. I would get on Zoom. I would literally have Zoom consultations with them as they were trying to wash their hair at home. That was another stream of income for me. You know what I'm saying? Um, so that was, definitely, as an entrepreneur, you learn problem solving. And as you were going through these keys for success, everyone you hit on, all I could think of in my head was problem solving. And then it took me back to, it's beyond my time, but Sanford and Sons, I like to binge watch old shows. And when the cop would come in with his partner and the partner would give like the detailed, rundown, and then he would give, ebonics or layman's terms
Right.
the other guy. So all I could think of was it's all problem solving. It's all problem solving. But problem solving comes with listening and looking and seeing what's going on. And literally, like we're made and we're wired to literally try to solve issues. And so that's what it is. But that was one of the constraints that definitely that was huge for me in my career, and a lot of those in the trades industry. So
Excellent. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of all the hairlines you saved probably during the COVID pandemic. I'm sure everyone is so thankful for your service. You started to talk about some great things about how you created markets in terms of being able to resell hair to a market audience that wasn't willing to risk even in-person contact and even remote styling tips that you offered via Zoom sessions. So you definitely covered the last bullet point. I want to talk more about you adapting to those applied constraints, but how those adaptations not only affected your time in the beauty industry, but did any of those learnings compound into any of the other entrepreneurial ventures that you have now entered?
um so Constraints, yes. So let's talk about the Inflatable Venue Atlanta company. So it's an Inflatable Venue Atlanta, which you might have seen it before. That name happened when I partnered, but before it was Blow Up Tent Rentals Atlanta. Right? Really simple, really like. So a constraint that I definitely came across um, was definitely trying to make a seasonal business non-seasonal. You know, I'm very creative, but without a large marketing budget, being very creative and only you knowing about it doesn't really matter much when you're trying to change the mindset of others. You know what I'm saying? That you need to actually use your equipment, right? So a constraint was that, in the wintertime, well, it's cold. And here in the wintertime in Georgia, it rains a lot. And so that precipitation and the fact that it's cold outside and people don't want to be outside, no matter how much you tell them that the outdoors is great, because I'm an outdoors girl, um, it doesn't matter to them. So once we fix those issues, right? So now after we fix those issues, now we got to get it out. You know what I'm saying? We fix those issues where our tents were heated all winter, right? And if there was precipitation, we found a pretty way to cover the top so that it didn't look raggedy and you could still have a great time. And so, just those constraints, during that time of the year, and we're coming out of it, yeah, things definitely slowed down. But then again, of course, without a very large marketing and advertising budget, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like you're going off of referrals, other businesses that you already worked with, referring you to, other corporations or businesses. So it was nice. It was definitely nice to definitely get a chance to still be out there and show people. But yeah, that would have been one of the constraints that definitely with the inflatable venue Atlanta business. Yeah.
Great. And that was an awesome adaptation that you listed in terms of being able to apply. Like you were saying, problem solving is so pertinent to really making sure that your business is resilient and able to face various constraints that may come along its way. So, we're going to, of course, go from the 99s to the 2000s to the modern era. And we're going to talk more about Reginald F. Lewis, Oprah Winfrey, Ursula Burns, and Robert F. Smith. Now, three of these individuals I knew prior to pretty much putting this deck together. But I must say, I myself was surprised that I didn't know Ursula Burns. So, Ursula Burns, I want to particularly highlight her. She's the first Black woman CEO of Fortune 500, and that Fortune 500 was Xerox. So, that was really quite a phenomenal thing for me to find out. Ironically, I know Robert F. Smith because the year that I graduated is the same year that he took care of the student loan debt of the Morehouse students that graduated that year. So I know Robert F. Smith for that reason, but given his proprietary investment methods and everything, that is his claim to fame, along with founding his company. Oprah Winfrey, I think, is a very household name, right? When we're talking about her ability to build branding and create new markets, right? Whether it was her talk shows or even the syndicated entertainment streams that came from within her network. We all know OWN Network. So think about that. And Reginald F. Lewis brokered the first multi-million dollar deal. So if you're in the law space, finance space, you definitely know what he's got going on. So let's talk about some of these keys for success. You talked earlier about being your authentic self. And one of those things about being your authentic self, especially in corporate, is tricky for people like us because how we perceive often does color the view that others have of us. We also talked about consistency and branding. So you talked about your relationship and how you present yourself in a professional manner where you have great time value, where you respect people's time, resources, etc. And that helped you build more relationships with more clientele and build on maybe a name in case by case basis. We'll also talk about technical expertise and resilience because it's going to take a little bit of grit for you to survive, especially in the business space as an entrepreneur. Talked about scalable business model creation. So we can talk about in terms of an example from Oprah Winfrey, started with her talk show, which built into the OWN network, which had various entertainment streams that came out of that. There's also the emphasis on operational excellence through the creation of an improvement system. So you don't want to be doomed to make the same mistakes, right? We talked about that with mentors. But what if it's a process inefficiency that you've identified? What are you going to do to correct that? And lastly, creating multiple revenue streams. So there are a lot of pieces we can pick up from the modern era. So I want to first start and say many people, many people take for granted how difficult being an entrepreneur and a business owner can be. Can you walk us through how you built your resilience as a serial entrepreneur?
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, you know what? It's been said, and I like to keep this top of mind, that to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, stepping out there by yourself and not receiving a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly paycheck from somebody will really show you how much you like yourself. It really will. And so at the end of the day, man, at the end of the day, what I will say is early on, so for those of you that don't know, I am a single mom of two boys. And early on, when I found out that I was, being divorced, um, I told, and that the father was not going to be as involved as he should be. When I figured that out, um, I told myself that these boys were going to live as if they had two parents' income in the home, period, because they didn't choose this life, you know. And so at the end of the day, that was my why for a very long time. That's what made me push through. That's what made me go and do the activity and speak up and speak to people. Um, Man, I had some odd jobs, but all of them allowed me to be my authentic self. And like I said, a lot of them were short lived. I can remember one of my first jobs being I was a team lead at a sales call facility for a water treatment company. And so I did so well that I got promoted, and so then I was over a team of people there. So that right there, sales, right? It was something that I liked to do. Let that go. I I danced. So coming up in high school, I was a dancer. Up north, we had the Pom Squad. We didn't have what y'all have down here, which I love, the majorettes and stuff like that. But I always wanted to be a majorette. But we had the Pom Squad, so I danced. So I ended up dancing D League for NBA D League, for a season. So there were just a lot of different odd jobs that I was able to do to still be my authentic self. Of course, doing hair, that was a passion and a God-given talent that I had. To be doing now the inflatable tent venues Atlanta, it allows me to network. It allows me to go to parties and set up and just be around happy people for their happy occasion, right? um so, and then now in real estate, it that honestly, man, I tell people it is so funny because I'm like, yeah, I built houses back when I was a little kid, and they kind of look at me like, girl. But it was so funny. I literally, my grandparents, they had a lot of land, and he had a pile of wood and all kind of stuff, and he had a garage full of nails and hammers, and I literally would build little huts and houses and literally sweep dirt. If it was a weeping willow tree, that was my house, because of course the branches that fell down were walls, like that. It was since I was a little girl, so I had a vivid imagination, and I've always been fearless. My dad, he recalls me jumping out of trees and different things like that. And so, I recall on a lot of that stuff to literally where I am today. Just making sure that I am doing the activity. You know what I'm saying? That's what, really is going to allow you to continue to build the confidence that you need, you know what I'm saying, to, be gritty out here, in the entrepreneurial field. If you don't have no dog in you, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur, period, because you're going to need it. Playing sports in high school and middle school helped me to, get that dog. I used to hate being on the AAU track team and having to practice out in the freezing cold in Indiana, running around the track, and my lungs would be like burning. But it allows you, it gives you, you remember those things, and it really trains you for when you're an adult and you're going through things. And at the end of the day, like I said, my main why was my children. And my main why today still is my children, even though they're college bound. I do what I do because they need that, they need to have that example. You know what I'm saying? They've seen me smile, they see me go out and have fun, they see mommy live her life, but at the end of the day, they know grit. They know get your butt up. You know what I'm saying? And so, raising two males, I realized that, I can't really make them men. They're gonna have to find those mentors, on their own, and I place them in front of people, and they've seen people their entire lives. But at the end of the day, I can instill, a bunch of different ethics as far as being good people. Like, I just wanted to make sure I raised good people. Like, we don't do this. They know, if you ask my children, what's your mom's biggest pet peeve? They'll tell you, if you litter, she thinks you're the scum of the earth. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you toss something out your window, just know, like, that's selfish. So, you know what I'm saying? Just being good people, making sure that they had good character. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, to me, that's what makes up a good sturdy man, is that character. And what I will say, because I'm a Disney lover and I have to go ahead and reference this, I just recently saw the movie Mufasa. Listen, boy, and all men aren't like this, and all dads aren't like this. How Taka's father was, and he didn't really teach him what he needed to know. But the fact that Mufasa got to be around Taka's mom, he really learned, what he needed to know to survive. And at the end of the day, um, again, like I said, I don't agree with that being all men or what kings, act like. I do understand that they were kind of referencing what, lions are, how they are actually, if you kind of, get off into, how animals are. That's kind of how
Right, the
males.
lionesses being the
Yeah,
hunters of
like,
the pack,
yes,
while the
absolutely.
males tend to stay in nap. So to,
Absolutely.
to give more context, Taka, if I hope you guys have seen Mufasa at this
Oh,
point,
yeah.
basically, the father of Taka explained to him that our duty as kings is to nap and to defend the pride. Now, I don't know how you can truly defend the pride when you're napping,
And you
but
don't know
to
how
that
to.
point, yeah, right. So just like Shanae said, you got to get up, right? That grit, and me being a former 300-meter hurdler and discus and shot put thrower,
I was a
I remember those
hurdler.
days where my lungs were burning too. So
Yes,
yes,
I
for
was
sure.
also a hurdler.
So, but yes, so
Absolutely.
you really just touched on some great points of resilience and how one your time and things that you dealt with really shaped your confidence, really shaped your resolve in not only providing for your family, but providing and sacrificing for the opportunities that you felt would give you the moment to be your most authentic self and the
Absolutely.
most consistent with your brand. So I really only have one more question for you here, and I'm going to slightly change the perspective.
Mm.
How do you identify the business's need for that? Excuse me. How do you identify the business need for that new venture is viable enough for you to pursue? So, say for example that you see a service that's missing. How do you go about setting up or really understanding that service is something I can actually make some money off of. That service is something that is has a really great need that it won't be just viable for a month or for a year, but it'll be viable for at least 2 years, maybe 3 years.
Okay. Um, so of course, my roots being the beauty industry. I'll start there. Um, so I had a lady, and I love to be around more seasoned women, and she said to me one day, what did she say? She said, there's a few trades or whatever that are gonna be needed always in life. I can't remember exactly how she said it, and she said liquor, because everybody wants to be happy, spirits or whatever. She said taxes, because everybody has to get their taxes done, and she said hair. And she meant beauty, because everybody got to look good. They want to look good, whether they do it at home or whether they're going to come to you and do it. All you have to do is pretty much get the people to pretty much be like, why do I need to go to her to get it done? Because they're going to do it. They need it done. And so those three, and I'm sure there are other ones, but those are the three that she had mentioned to me. So with that being said, within the beauty industry, the different things that I did and the different paths that I actually took in the industry, there was a time when I first came here to Georgia that I was actually traveling to my clients. And so I was a travel hairstylist. And that was a necessity for high level entrepreneurs. They didn't want to sit in the salon around other people. That's when I started getting into doing athlete wives hair or celebrity figures. So there was an industry, for that. Different things, in that industry. When I realized, I see when microblading hit the scenes. Okay, and if you don't know what microblading is, that's where at a low level you're tattooing on your eyebrows, right? I realized that women, and men, because I have tattooed on men's eyebrows. And one notable person, I'll say it on here, and he was proud to get them done, Keith Sweat. So I was able to do his, but you wouldn't know that, he didn't have them done, because, as entertainers, they were makeup, right? So at the end of the day, that was a needed service, because your eyebrows literally frame your face. Okay. So for some women, it really changed the way that they looked, because especially if they don't keep their eyebrows, manicured or whatnot, that was something that it started about, what, maybe got into it maybe 11, 12 years ago, and it's still going strong today. It's still going strong today. Once it fades off, you now have that look. So now you got to go get your touch up. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, things like that, I would go after those type of industries, like within that industry, things that I thought were lasting and were gonna last. And if we can go to the inflatable tent reviews, the reason I got into that was because when I wanted my event to look different, and I didn't want it to look the same as other people's event. I didn't want a canvas tent. I wanted something different. And when I went, I heard of these tents before. And when I went to go research these tents, they only had links for you to purchase them. They had no link for you to just rent the tents. And I, at that time, just like, I just need it for this one event, and that's it. And I'm good. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. It was cool. It was sleek, and it was not a lot of people were in it yet. And so that's a big thing that I definitely, when I'm looking to do something, I try to get on the ground floor. That type thinking honestly came to me from being in MLMs at a young age, multi-level marketing, right? So anytime you get into an MLM, you want to get into it on the ground floor, right? When there's not a whole lot of people in it, because once the market is saturated, then it kind of, wears out depending on what industry you're in. So I did Body by Vi. I was big in Body by Vi. I was on one of the winning teams in Body by Vi. So that was huge for me, but I was into fitness. So it fit me, right? So it wasn't a hard thing for me to sell. So that is kind of, how I determine how I'm going to make another move. I see where they could improve on something, or where, maybe within that industry there is a new niche, or there is a niche that has been untapped, or a market that has been untapped, or with real estate. Um, I knew that I could get into the game and kill it. Why? Because the majority of real estate agents, and I'm not talking to any real estate agents that are listening to this at all, but the majority of real estate agents are passive and they don't like to do the work. And they will list your house and they will set a sign in your yard, and that's about it. They'll put it on the MLS and wait for somebody to come pass, right? Well, I already knew that that's not me, because I have built a beauty business from 0 to 6 figures. So I knew I could do that. I don't mind talking to people or making the call or prospecting, right? I've done that. I did the MLNs. I can cold call. I became a team lead. So I took from all the things in my past that I've gone through, and I knew that, okay, starting now this new business, I know I'm going to be able to come into the game and kill it for whoever I'm representing. So that's kind of where they got that from.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Definitely some great nuggets of knowledge there. I hope you guys are listening in terms of how to really check for a viability of a future business, not just getting in on the ground level or maybe in as a founder, but really understanding that certain businesses and services are tenants to the community. So things that will always be there, right? So now we've reached the end of my questions, but now I'd like to open it up to the audience for at least 2 questions for our remaining time on our webinar. So whether you're watching via LinkedIn or YouTube, you can definitely go ahead and enter in your questions in the comments. That's a great question. All right, so I already have one.
Okay.
Do you think mentorship should be a paid service?
I absolutely do. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, well, and it honestly, it depends on that person, the mentor. I believe in, I'll do it for free, right? And to a certain extent, yes, you want to get paid for it, but at the end of the day, you want to go ahead and there are certain things that I believe that you can do to showcase your added value. Okay. So when you can show somebody how valuable you are, people will want to pay for you. People will want to take up your time, and they're willing to say, "Hey, what do I need to do to take up your time?" You know what I'm saying? So if I, like, for me, I have a mentorship program that is actually about to start up at Westlake High School. It's a beauty mentorship program. A lot of people don't realize that the beauty industry is a STEAM industry. It is science, it is technology, it is art, and it is math. If you cannot do math, you cannot be a hairstylist, an effective one. If you are not good with the periodic table, you won't be an effective hairstylist. I would tell you that. You're gonna burn somebody's hair out. Okay, so there's a lot, that once you start educating people and giving away free advice and free knowledge, that at a certain point, that person is going to, you know what I'm saying? Like, people are busy, you know what I'm saying? So why wouldn't you want to pour back into them to take, because essentially you're taking from them. They're pouring into you, you're taking. What are you pouring back? And why wouldn't you want to pour back?
Excellent answer. Excellent answer. So if you guys didn't know, don't just go out here mixing various chemicals and putting in people's hair, because you have to be licensed to know what those chemical reactions are doing, or you
Yes.
may burn away the baby hairs. So just be clear.
Baby, not just the
You heard it
baby
here
hair.
first. You heard it here first. Do we have any more questions in the comment section? All right, I have another one. If someone watching this is on the fence on starting a business, what advice would you give them, and which way would you sway them?
Ooh, so baby, come hang around me. You would know that answer straight up. Okay, so number one, I would ask them a question. Why are they on the fence? 9 times out of 10, The number one answer, they're going to give you 10 different answers, but it all stems back to fear. Okay? Fear. False evidence appearing real. And then a lot of us connect that to anxiety, right? So then we get anxiety about a situation, right? So now we're like, I don't know. What if it never happened? It never happened. You won't know until you start. So start. So I guess I answered that question. If you if you were to ask me, should I start? I would say jump in with both feet. Now, if you're going to jump both feet in, you better be prepared to swim. I don't care how strong that current is. You better save yourself. And that's what I would say. I'm sorry. That's just how I am. So I'm pretty intense. Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Even at work, engineering can be described as drinking from the fire hose. So you learn a lot in a very short amount of time. So it's sometimes it's sink or swim, but the people around you, the community around you, the support you have is often beneficial as to how you really survive that scenario and how you thrive. You go from surviving to thriving. But like you said, you have to take the first step. You have to jump in the deep end. You have to attempt to swim. They will throw you the life preserver. They see you need it, but you have to give the effort. What you put
Yeah.
in is what you get out.
Yeah.
Can't cheat the grind.
Yeah. And so I'm gonna go back to something that I said early. You really see how much you like yourself.
Right.
Like if you're in a career, and this is different for everybody, but if you're in a career that you hate and that you loathe going to every single day, and you continue to do that without starting um, um, gaining knowledge, training to do other things that you actually love and that you want to see happen for you, sowing seeds for your future, I'm going to say you don't like yourself very much. You don't. And at the end of the day, I love to watch things, so I will watch things all day. And I finally, guys, got a plant to live for past 6 months and grow, right? So in watching this plant, the only reason as it was growing, and I finally was like, oh my gosh, it's still alive, it's growing. In the beginning, guys, this plant, I got it from the grocery store, so it was the plant, it was nice, right? Of course, it was pretty when I bought it. Baby, when I tell you, leaves started falling off, leaves started dying. Leaves started falling off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm watering it. I'm doing what it said. It said only once a week and put it in this window for sun. I'm doing it. Like, what is happening right now, right? That leaf fell. That leaf till there was one large leaf remaining. It was ugly. And then all of a sudden, you saw three little baby ones pop up. This was like 2, 3 months later. I'm like, oh my God, like it's gonna make it, right? And then you saw one nice large leaf pop on out there. And baby, when I looked at that plant and I went back and I said, you know what? Had I looked at that plant when all those leaves were falling off and I had one leaf left and said, you know what? Forget this. This is not for me. Nope, throwing the whole plant away because I'd have killed another plant. I would have never seen it come to its beautiful new self. Its beautiful new self. I stayed consistent. Every Saturday, I watered that plant and I set it right back in that window. Its name is Dom. I did name it and I did talk to it a couple times because I couldn't understand why it was doing me wrong like that. But at the end of the day, guys, you got to know that you're planting to not be moving in doing something that you absolutely love. If you're not growing, if you're not learning, like you are literally dying. You are literally dying. If you're not using yourself or being used for something that you absolutely love to do, you're dying. And you got to think about it that way. And then making those consistent deposits, consistent, you put the seed in the ground, right? You had the thought, you were given the dream, you were given the vision. No matter how long it takes you to actually get there, just start watering it little by little, but be consistent with the watering. Eventually, it's going to sprout. And a lot of people think that this is supposed to happen overnight, and it's not. I'm going to take it one time to the Bible because I am a believer, but I also believe in, business and, some people may not be believers. One a scripture that I caught hold to that helped me in my season of waiting, and it was longer than I had ever anticipated and had ever been through in my life, was James 1, the chapter of James 1, where man being patient produces perfection. Like, whoa, that was paraphrased very, very short. But go read James 1 and literally meditate on it, meditate on it till it got in my spirit. And literally, I would just do different things, put deposits, do this. It helped me get through my real estate courses quick. It helped me after failing that real estate exam because it's so hard, 2 times, passing on the third time. You know what I'm saying? It really, really, really helped me to stay just like this throughout the whole situation. So I don't know. Let me get off my high horse.
I mean, listen, I have to commend you because it's not easy being a plant parent. Congrats to you and your budding green thumb. And all good things in life take time, as you really just explained with James 1. And that is a tenet I live by too. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. That's another
Yes.
one that I live
Oh
by.
my gosh.
So,
Yes. Yeah.
yes,
Ah,
you do need that dog in you.
yes.
Most people don't realize you need that dog in you, and it does not need to be a Chihuahua. So,
No, it does not need to be a chihuahua. It's so funny. My dad growing up, we always talk about little tiny dogs. He called them rats. So, I always grew up around big dogs. We had a Japanese Akita when I was growing up. And a huge dog. So, we didn't get a lot of visitors because everybody thought we had a horse. And and so that just really brought back, a lot of, just realizing that you really gonna have to have a loud and large bark in certain situations. You know what I'm saying? In order for people to take you seriously, even so.
right. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation that we've had today about Black business in the past and the present and how those parallels tie into what you do as a serial entrepreneur. And just to recap, if you joined us later on, Shanae Wilson is a licensed cosmetologist, a published author, a realtor, and a co-founder of Inflatable Venues. So honestly, I don't know what she can't do at this point. But as you can see, she's very well versed in various sectors of business and being a serial entrepreneur. So before we close for this evening, I'd love to showcase the fact that one, she's a real estate agent and of course always looking for clients. So if you need any of her contact information, you can copy it down from the screen that is currently shown.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I totally appreciate that. Thank you so much for that shout out. Thank you.
And with that, we have come to the end of our Real Talk webinar for February, Black History Month edition. I appreciate each and every one of you all joining us this evening for an hour to discuss our topic. Thank you again, Shanae Wilson, for being
Absolutely.
so humble as our esteemed guest to walk us through your walks of life and different businesses that you have triumphed in, learned great lessons from, because really failure is only a lesson. You either win or you learn. And just being able to impart that knowledge to us this evening.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. If I could leave you with one last thing, I would say be a servant leader. Just be a servant leader. Serve somebody. Go serve somebody. And I promise you, you're going to get out of it what you want. Just go serve somebody. That's it.
Thank you for those words. You heard that, everybody? Serve your community, serve somebody, pay it forward.
Yep.
And with that, we conclude our February webinar. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Have a great night.
Peace.